What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today, I'm bringing you a 2025 mock draft. The format that we're going to be looking at today will be a half PPR league, 12 teams, and then I'll go through the settings here as we have a roster of 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, 1 tight end, 1 flex, and 5 bench spots. And I decided to do a random draft order, so it's just me obviously in here, but we will hit the randomizer and we're going to draft from the 4 spot today. I haven't done very many mock drafts from the beginning of or the front end of the first round, so it'll be very interesting to see, especially when we kind of have I would say a big 3 to 4 going on there. So with Jamar Chase, Bijan, and Saquon Barkley, and then kind of up in the air about the 4th. There's a lot of different options we can go with. So without further ado, if you have a draft this weekend, hopefully this video helps you, kind of get a landscape of where players are going. And then I say we get right into it. I'm going to change the no limit, update, and we're good to go. Alrighty, let's start the draft. So when we start this draft, it's going to be Saquon Barkley, Jamar Chase, Bijan Robinson, which I think will be the consensus 1, 2, and 3. I don't think you'll get much difference from that unless you have someone that goes real out there and probably drafts, Jahmyr Gibbs, I know is getting a lot of hype, Justin Jefferson, those type of guys. So here at the 4th pick, there's, in my eyes, really, it's 3 options, and it's the top 3 guys. I think it's Justin Jefferson, Jahmyr Gibbs, and CeeDee Lamb. And they all have their benefits and their, we'll call them their pros and cons, basically. Jefferson has J.J. McCarthy and has battled some injuries the last year or two, but is still awesome, right? We know that he's probably the best receiver in the league, like talent-wise. Jahmyr Gibbs are a good team in the Lions, great team, but with losing their offensive coordinator and David Montgomery there is a potential limit for touchdowns in that offense. And then CeeDee Lamb, who plays with Dak Prescott, now is George Pickens. I think he'll be okay, but I don't think any of us are really convinced that Dak Prescott is the best quarterback ever. But Lamb is awesome. If I'm here, I'm probably going to lean going Jahmyr Gibbs because I just really do believe that he's awesome. And I think great players outshine not so great players. While David Montgomery's good, I think Jahmyr Gibbs really has the shot to be elite. So I'm going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs. And I'm a big RB guy. I love running backs. So if you feel kind of sketchy about the running backs, if I was going to pick a receiver, I would always go Jefferson because, once again, the dude's elite. But here, I'm going to go Jahmyr Gibbs because I'm an RB fiend. And honestly, I don't know how great the RBs will be coming back in the 2nd round, especially late in the 2nd round. So let's go Gibbs. All right, so after Gibbs, we got Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Derrick Henry, Ashton Genty, Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors, Christian McCaffrey at the 112. On the turn, Nico Collins, Devon Achane, Brock Bowers goes at 2-3, which is crazy. 15th player overall. Jonathan Taylor, A.J. Brown, Brian Thomas, Drake London, Kyron Williams, and that hurts my soul not being able to get Kyron Williams, but there's a couple great players here where, man, we still have a lot of potential upside guys. You have Ladd McConkey, who was over 1,000 yards last year, Jackson Smith-Njigba, who was over 1,000 yards and was great, even T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson. After that group, though, I will admit, I don't love, what's going on my screen? I don't love a lot of the receivers that we'll be looking at here in terms of Marvin Harrison, Mike Evans, Terry McLaurin. I don't love those guys. I like a lot of these running backs where I'd feel comfortable getting one of those guys on the turn, whether that's Jacobs, Irving, Brown, Hall, Cook. So honestly, if I was in a real draft, I think I would go Josh Jacobs and just pair up 2 awesome RBs and then see what receiver gets back to me. But I don't know if I really want to pass up on one of these guys that I think could be really great. My pick here would be Jackson Smith-Njigba. I just think that offense, it's really him and no one else. I think Sam Darnold had a good year last year. I think he's probably the most talented player on the board right now, or one of them. So I'm going to go with JSN, and we'll see what running back comes back to me. Ideally, I would say if I don't get Jacobs, Irving, or Brown, or probably Cook, I'm not so super sold on Hall. I would say I made a mistake because I really hope one of those guys falls back to me. But we will go with JSN here and see who we can get on the way back in terms of running backs. All right, so that really sucks. Josh Jacobs, Josh Allen, Bucky Irving, Lamar Jackson, Ladd McConkey, Chase Brown. did not make it back to us. So sadly, I would have loved to either get Bucky Irving, Josh Jacobs, Chase Brown, or even Ladd McConkey, right? I think in a real draft, there's a chance that maybe another tight end goes or a quarterback can go off the board, another one, where we might get Jaden Daniels falling into that mix. Here we are, and these are kind of the options we're looking at the top of our draft boards. We have James Cook, Breece Hall, Amarion Hampton, Alvin Kamara, Ken Walker, that mix where I think we can maybe get one of those guys in the 4th round on the way back, so I don't want to reach too high. And then here at receiver, we have Tyreek Hill, T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison. None of these guys I am too enthused on, to be honest. Tyreek Hill has a lot of questions. T. Higgins is kind of a baby. I just can't stand having him on my team. Garrett Wilson's obviously a great player, but plays with Justin Fields, so not a great offense. Marvin Harrison, I'm not sold on. Mike Evans, everyone has a ton of questions. And then tight end. I'm not sold on ever getting a tight end early. I'm not a big believer in it. Same thing with quarterback. Jaden Daniels is staring me right in the face, but I'd rather pass and make sure we get a better RB or wide receiver. Here, like I said before, I'm kind of a fiend for running backs, so I'm really leaning here between Breece Hall, James Cook, and Amarion Hampton, just because I think we could maybe get Kamara or Ken Walker or Chuba Hubbard on the way back. So with that being said, I think I'm just going to go with James Cook, who I've seen had 16 touchdowns last year and over 1,000 yards. They just signed him to the big deal. So I think James Cook here is just a smash pick. I'm going to go with that and see what receiver / running back, because I'm not afraid to go another running back. I'm not afraid to figure out receiver later and when I'm drafting. So we'll see who we can get on the way back. So after James Cook went Tyreek Hill, T. Higgins, then back-to-back tight ends, Trey McBride, George Kittle, Garrett Wilson, Jaden Daniels, Breece Hall, Jalen Hurts, Marvin Harrison, Mike Evans, Alvin Kamara, Terry McLaurin, Amarion Hampton, Chuba Hubbard, which I would have loved to get back to me, DJ Moore, Rashee Rice, and then we are back. This is a tough pick because here's a lot of running backs that I'm not super sold on, but I still have a couple guys that I like with Ken Walker, James Cook. Joe Mixon's probably too rich for my blood with the injury right now, but I'm not against taking him, just not at this price. And then if we flex over to receivers, there's still some guys I like. I still like Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton, Devonta Smith. I like this group here. I'm really liking Cortland Sutton this year. I think the guy's finally being valued where he needs to be after being neglected all these years. Devontae Adams would be more of my pick if I knew what was going on with Matt Stafford at the current moment. Right now, he hasn't been practicing with his back issue. As whenever you're watching this, that might have changed, but currently, as in the 14th of August, he's not practicing. So I'm going to pass on him. DK, I just kind of don't want to deal with the Aaron Rodgers thing right now, even though I love DK. So right now it's between Cortland Sutton and Devonta Smith. While I do love Devonta Smith, I know Sutton's the number one on his offense with Bo Nix, who was pretty good last year, statistically at least. So I'll go Cortland Sutton, do an even split of 2 running backs, 2 receivers. And hopefully, if Devonta Smith comes back to me in that second, on the turn, with our 5th round pick, I would love to take one of these receivers if they're there. Running backs too, we could take the gamble necessarily too, I guess. Actually, before I make a pick, we could take the gamble and wait for James Conner or Ken Walker to get back to me. I don't know if I love that. Yeah, actually, after looking at it, there's probably 4 receivers here that I'm pretty comfortable taking. So we have to get through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picks. 6 picks with 4 receivers that I like. So I'm going to go with, I'll probably go James Conner here just because I don't want Ken Walker on the same team as JSN. So let's go James Conner. So that way I am shored up at the running back spot and then we can hammer receivers after this. So let's go James Conner and let's see if one of the 4 guys in Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton, or Devonta Smith come back to me, as I would love for one of those guys to be my wide receiver too. So let's take James Conner and let's see if any of the receivers get back to me. All right. So after after James Conner went Ken Walker, Cortland Sutton, DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton hurts. But then David Montgomery, Sam Laporta, Joe Burrow went. So now we are looking at one of these 2 receivers here. If I was drafting this real life and this was, September 1st when I'm doing my drafts, I would probably be taking Devontae Adams if Matt Stafford is there. But with Matt Stafford not being in the mix right now, we're not sure what's going on with his injury. Keeping it real life, if I was drafting today, I would 100% smash Devonta Smith. I would just take this pick. I would go clap my hands and go away with it. Devonta Smith, just looking at stats real quick, I feel like is one of the most overlooked fantasy players every year. I mean, he's basically just 1,000 yards and 78 touchdowns every season. You can see here. And last year, I missed some games, but still was on pace to have a great season. So I think he's one of those overlooked guys. And for some reason, everyone's worried about the Philly offense, which I'm not totally understanding because it's the same thing running it back. They did lose their offense coordinator, but I have faith that the Eagles will just figure it out, to be honest. So after Devonta Smith, we got Zay Flowers, Devontae Adams, RJ Harvey, Joe Mixon, Jameson Williams, Xavier Worthy, Patrick Mahomes, Ted McMillan, TJ Hawkinson, Trey Henderson, Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Hunter, George Pickens, Jerry Jeudy, Aaron Jones, Baker Mayfield. And then we're back up. And now this is where I think this is one of the hardest picks in fantasy football to make, is this 5th, 6th round, because where do you really go? There's no one that you really feel super comfortable with. We still have some good tight ends in Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, but I don't know if I'm quite willing to pay for those guys quite yet. Maybe if one of them fell in the 7th, I'd be really interested, but I'd rather fill out my starting lineup, and we're still a receiver short. We have plenty of running backs depth here, and there's no one on the board at running back that I'm super dying to have. I do like Tony Pollard, and I like some of these guys, Tyron Tracy, Brian Robinson, a little bit later in the draft. Like, I think we can get those guys 7th, 8th round. So I'm going to wait on those guys. Quarterback's so deep to me that I'm just not interested in taking any of these guys. I'm okay living in this range of Justin Fields, Jordan Love, Drake May. I'm okay with living with those guys. So really here, I'm going to look to get my wide receiver 3. And oh my God, what do you do? You have Jalen Waddle, who's shown a lot of upside. Chris Olave, who is concussion bound with a bad quarterback play. Calvin Ridley with a rookie quarterback, but usually he's a 1,000-yard receiver. Jordan Addison suspended. Odunze hasn't done anything. Godwin's hurt. Jacoby Myers is one of those guys that is pretty solid every year, but who knows what a Brock Bauer offense. Khalil Shakir, same thing. So I don't know if I'm sold on any of these wide receivers or running backs. So I'm actually in a pretty tricky spot here where I don't really value any of these guys higher than anyone else. So maybe we do something a little ballsy here. Maybe we take Travis Kelce just to get a good tight end where obviously he wasn't elite last year, but looking at the stats of it, he played in 16 games, had 800 yards and 97 catches for a tight end. That's still above average for a tight end, and maybe it gets even better this year. So let's just take Kelce, right? Let's just go for the tight end and then see who we can get on the way back and see how this affects our team. I probably would have took Olave there if I was thinking like real life, or Tony Pollard. I honestly thought Pollard would get back to me, but we don't need a 4th running back right now, So let's focus on the receivers, and I think it's got to be Calvin Ridley. The guy, although has his up and down games, he's been a 1,000-yard receiver the last 2 years, and playing with some pretty bad quarterbacks in that time. So let's go Calvin Ridley. And just because a lot of these guys are question marks to me too, nothing's guaranteed here. But if I can get a 1,000-yard receiver as my wide receiver 3, then I think I'm feeling pretty good about that, even if there's going to be inconsistent games. Like I said, he's your wide receiver 3, so there's not a ton of hope there for you in this late of rounds. All right, so we're back here in the 8th round, and this is what our team is looking like so far. I'll show the roster over here. Jahmyr Gibbs, James Cook, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Devonta Smith, Calvin Ridley, Travis Kelce, and James Conner. So that's a pretty good starting lineup. Where we're going to have some issues, I think, is with depth, right? We technically do have a backup running back at James Conner, would be our flex, quote unquote, but he's our 3rd running back, and receiver is where we're pretty weak. We don't have the best wide receiver 3 here at Calvin Ridley. So I think I'm going to kind of lean towards drafting receivers. And here, I'm just going to take the shot, I think, on Stephon Diggs. And it'd be probably between him and Ricky Pearsall, where I think Ricky Pearsall could step in as the number 1 or 2. There's been great camp reports of Pearsall kind of breaking out in camp. So Pearsall's interesting. But I've also heard the same thing about Diggs. We don't know if he'll be ready for week 1. So I guess if I was drafting right now, I wouldn't take Diggs, actually. Kind of, go back on what I said earlier about the Davante Adams pick with no Stafford. If I was drafting today, I wouldn't take Diggs. I would probably rip off at Ricky Pearsall. Quarterbacks, I still think I can wait. I already got the tight end. Running backs, I do like Jalen Warren and Ramondre Stevenson, J.K. Dobbins. We're kind of running out of guys there that I think are startable. but I got my 3 running backs already. So let's lean towards receiver and let's get our backup, one of our backups here. Let's do Ricky Pearsall. Let's pull it. All right. So on the way back, this is what the team's looking like here. We are now basically filling out our bench and looking for a quarterback. So with the bench here, I'm looking for probably one more running back that I feel somewhat, I don't want to say confident, but someone that I think can play right away. And I have a good, not great feeling about Javonte Williams. I still think he's like an okay player. He's playing for Dallas right now where they have Jaden Blue. I don't believe in Miles Sanders or Phil Maffa or Deuce Vaughn being any factors in that backfield. So I really think it could be a two-headed monster of Javonte Williams, well, monster of Javonte Williams and Jaden Blue. And honestly, Jaden Blue hasn't really had the best camp reports. So I'm going to go Javonte Williams here. And that would be kind of our RB4, where now I feel like we can kind of just not be so dependent on position here. We have a lot of flexibility to either go, pick the quarterback we want if we see anyone on the board that we don't want to miss on. And the one thing I don't like about Sleeper, I will admit, is a lot of these teams will draft 2 quarterbacks, which usually shouldn't. No, it definitely shouldn't happen in drafts. I don't think any team would ever take Herbert and Bo Nix or Jaden Daniels and Brock Purdy. I wish they would kind of fix that. Whatever. It's not a big deal. I'm going to probably wait one more rotation to take the quarterback just because I'm okay, like I said, with the Justin Fields, Jordan Love, CJ Stroud group. And I would imagine one of those guys will get back to us. So looking at it here of players overall, we do have Michael Pittman, who plays in a pretty bad offense, and just a lot of unknowns here. It's round 11 or 10, so I don't want to spend too much time on this. I'm just going to take another running back that I think is being really undervalued, and that's Rachaad White. I mean, Rachaad White last year was really great for fantasy. He finishes the 22 in PPR. Everyone's so worried about Bucky Irving, but to me, what if Rachaad White maybe loses the job, but still catches 50 balls? To me, that's a valuable player in fantasy football, and if they're going to give Bucky Irving all the work, then I think that might be a mistake just based on the player he is. He's good. Is he big enough? Can he handle all that workload? So I'll just take the shot on Rachaad White to maybe be a good backup here. All right, so then we have basically 3 more picks, and we'll get through them quickly. I'm not really looking at any more running backs. I think we're going to stick to the quarterback, wide receiver range here, and I'm going to pull the trigger on the quarterback because I'm worried that they'll start taking backups in this mock draft. And the guy that I'm really eyeing is Jordan Love. Jordan Love for me, and just looking statistically, like 2 years ago, he was the QB5. Last year, he was 17. He had no rushing ability after he hurt his knee and his ankle at all. But the year prior, he had 250 yards and a couple touchdowns. I'm not saying he's going to be killing it on the ground, but last year he literally had like 50 rushing yards. That's not going to happen again. I would be so shocked if that happened for Jordan Love, who's an athletic guy. So here, I'm going to pull the trigger on Jordan Love, who I think has a lot of weapons in a good offense. They just added Matthew Golden. So I wouldn't be scared to take Jordan Love here in 11th. I think that's a great steal. And it's a good thing we did because Dak Prescott, Justin Fields, Drake May, Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud all went off the board. And I would have been pretty annoyed if I didn't take them and we lost all those quarterbacks. So now, with me taking a bunch of running backs here, I'm just going to focus straight on receivers. And there is not a lot of high upside guys here at all. One guy that has been standing out in camp is Demario Douglas. He's really low on draft boards right now. We could just take the shot and see if anything works out, and I don't see why not. But he is going at 180, so we'll wait till the last pick. But out of all these guys here, no one super stands out to me. Adam Thielen actually would be because he just has been solid. I mean, last year he missed some time, but in the games he played, in 10 games, he had 600 yards. Like, he was averaging 60 yards a game, 5 touchdowns, 45 catches or 48 catches in 10 games. Like, it's not the worst season I've ever seen. So he's old, but maybe he just becomes the starter with Xavier Legette, Ted McMillan, Hunter Renfrow. Just no one really solidified in that offense. It could be Adam Thielen again one more time. So I'm just going to take the shot on him because we could just use someone safe that I think could just be a playable flex here instead of shooting for the major upside. Actually, you know what? With Demario Douglas being so low, I really am a Cedric Tillman fan. I thought he was really great last year in the games he played. Statistically, not amazing, but just looking at some weekly games, he had an 8 for 81, 7 for 99, 6 for 75 game, and then the concussions pretty much knocked him out for the season. So I would just take the shot on Cedric Tillman here and hope we get an upside play. That's really what I'm hoping for. That's really it. So there we go. That's our mock draft, right? I hope I went through the picks enough. I'm sure you guys will disagree down below. Let me know what you would have done in certain situations. Make sure you timestamp it so I know. But I'm liking the team. I wonder, and I kind of wish we did it a little differently. I'm happy we took James Conner, but I kind of wish at the pick here, let me lower this, in this round right here, in round 4, I kind of wish we pulled the trigger on Cortland Sutton to feel a little bit more confident in my RB3. I think I would have liked it a little more if we had Cortland Sutton, and then we could have maybe came back around and still taken Ken Walker. Maybe we could have got Connor later, or even not. We could have found another running back, Chuba Hubbard, Amarion Hampton. Actually, they went before. We could have went with Mixon or Montgomery. We could have figured something else out, basically. So that's the only really big downside, just because I don't think our receiving core is that strong. But I think our running backs are really good here, so I feel pretty good about the team. So that's going to be it. Thank you for watching the video. I really do appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. I'll have videos coming all season long. Thank you for watching. And if you want to check out another video on our ADP drafts or passes, it'll be right here. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.